The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty station in Rico, Colorado, and Jennifer Taylor knew that stepping down from it would either save her life or end it completely. The year was 1882, and the mountain town sat nestled in the San Juan Range, its silver mines bringing fortune to some and heartbreak to others. Jennifer pressed a trembling hand to her chest, feeling the letters tucked inside her bodice. The correspondence from Roland Tucker had been warm, kind even, promising a home and partnership in marriage. What those letters had not mentioned, what she had not dared to write in return, was the shadow following her all the way from St. Louis. Her shoes touched Colorado soil, and immediately the thin mountain air made her dizzy. Or perhaps it was fear. Jennifer steadied herself against the coach, her brown traveling dress dusty from 2 weeks of hard roads. She was 22 years old, auburn-haired and green-eyed, with a face her mother once called pleasant enough. Not a beauty that would turn heads, but not homely either. Right now she felt ancient with worry. "Miss Taylor." A deep voice cut through her spinning thoughts. Jennifer turned and found herself looking up at a man who seemed carved from the mountains themselves. Roland Tucker stood well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders beneath a clean cotton shirt and leather vest. His dark hair touched his collar beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and his eyes were the color of whiskey in lamplight. He was perhaps 28, maybe 30, with the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from honest work under open skies. "Mr. Tucker," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Something flickered across his face, concern perhaps, and he moved closer with surprising gentleness for such a large man. "You look about ready to faint. When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning, I think." The admission came easier than expected. The stations were crowded and she did not finish. She had been saving every penny, knowing what awaited her. Roland did not ask more questions. Instead, he collected her single battered trunk as though it weighed nothing and gestured toward the main street. "Let us get you fed first. Everything else can wait." The restaurant was small but clean, attached to one of the better hotels in town. Jennifer tried not to devour the beef stew like a starving animal, but Roland seemed to understand. He ordered her a second bowl without comment and waited patiently while she ate bread still warm from the oven. "Better?" he asked when some color had returned to her cheeks. "Yes, thank you." "I apologize for my appearance. The journey was longer than I anticipated. You came from St. Louis. That is no small distance." Roland leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow was not. "I want to be straight with you, Miss Taylor. I know we have corresponded for several months, but letters only tell part of a story. I would like us to spend a few days getting acquainted before we make any final decisions about marriage. I have arranged a room for you at this hotel, and there is no obligation. If you decide I am not what you hoped for, I will pay your passage to wherever you wish to go." Jennifer's throat tightened. His generosity made what she had to tell him so much harder. "Mr. Tucker, you are very kind, but I must tell you something before we go any further. I should have written it in my letters, but I was afraid you would refuse me and I had nowhere else to turn." His expression did not change. "Go on." "I am being followed by a man named Victor Moss. He is—" She forced herself to continue to say the shameful words. "My late father borrowed money from him, $500. When father died last year, Mr. Moss said the debt transferred to me. I have been paying him what I can, but the interest keeps growing. He said if I did not pay the full amount by the end of this month, he would take payment in other ways." Jennifer could not look at Roland as she spoke. Her hands twisted in her lap, waiting for him to call for the sheriff, to send her away, to do anything but what he did. "Look at me." His voice was firm but not harsh. She lifted her eyes to find no judgment in his face, only a calculating expression as though he were working through a problem. "This Victor Moss, he followed you here. He was on the stage 2 days behind mine. I saw him at the station in Denver when we changed coaches. He smiled at me and tipped his hat, so I would know he was still coming." Roland nodded slowly. $500, you said? 537, with the interest he has added. "Mr. Tucker, I understand if you want me to leave. I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that being married might make him give up the claim, but I realize now that I was only thinking of myself. I have put you in danger by coming here. How much do you still owe him? All of it?" "I managed to send him $80 over the past year, but he said it barely covered the interest." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I worked as a seamstress, took in laundry, did everything I could, but it was never enough." And he made it clear that he did not really want the money. Roland's jaw tightened, and Jennifer saw something dangerous flash in those amber eyes. "When is he due to arrive? Tomorrow, perhaps the next day. Then we have time." Roland stood and placed several coins on the table, more than enough to cover their meal. "Come, I need to show you something." Jennifer followed him outside, confusion mixing with exhaustion. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent behind the mountains, casting long shadows across Rico's main street. The town was busy with miners ending their shifts, women finishing their shopping, and the general hum of frontier life. Roland helped her into a buggy waiting outside the restaurant and took the reins himself. They drove east from the town center, up a winding road that climbed into pine-covered hills. Jennifer wanted to ask where they were going, but found herself distracted by the beauty surrounding them. The aspens were beginning to turn gold, and the air smelled of pine sap in coming autumn. After 20 minutes, they crested a rise, and Jennifer gasped. Spread before them was a valley of perhaps 100 acres, with a stream cutting through its center. A large house stood on a slight elevation, built of logs and stone with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Barns and outbuildings dotted the property, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance. Horses ran in a fenced pasture near the main house, their coats gleaming in the slanting light. "This is my ranch," Roland said simply. "The Crooked Creek Ranch. I have owned it for 6 years, built most of it with my own hands. I run cattle and breed horses, sell them to the army mostly. I do well enough." Well enough seemed a considerable understatement. The property spoke of success and careful management. Jennifer could see the pride in Roland's face as he looked over his land, and she understood why he had wanted a wife. This was a place meant to be filled with family, with life. "It is beautiful," she said honestly. "I brought you here because I want you to understand something." Roland turned to face her fully. "I am not a poor man, Miss Taylor. The debt you carry, the amount this Victor Moss claims you owe, I could pay that before sunset and not miss the money. But I will not do it to buy you or to put you in my debt instead of his." Hope and confusion warred in Jennifer's chest. "I do not understand." "If you agree to stay, to give us a chance to build something real between us, I will pay your debt as a wedding gift. Not as a loan, not expecting repayment or gratitude. If things do not work between us, if you decide after a month or a year that you want to leave, you can go with no obligation to me. The debt will be settled either way." "Why?" the word burst from her. "Why would you do that for someone you just met?" Roland looked back at the valley, at the home he had built. "Because I know what it is like to be trapped by circumstances beyond your control. I know what it is like to need help and have no one offer it. And because no woman should be forced into anything by a man like the one you have described." He met her eyes again. "I am offering you freedom, Miss Taylor. What you choose to do with it is entirely up to you. Jennifer felt tears spill down her cheeks, unable to stop them this time. "I do not know what to say. Say you will stay at the hotel tonight and think about it. Tomorrow I will handle Mr. Moss when he arrives. After that you can decide if you want to know me better. And if I say no, if I take your generosity and still choose to leave, then I will wish you well and mean it." Roland's smile was slight but genuine. "Though I hope you will at least give me a fighting chance to win your affection honestly." They returned to town as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Roland saw her settled in a clean room at the hotel, ensured she had money for meals, and bid her good night with a respectful tip of his hat. Jennifer sat on the bed long after he left, trying to make sense of a man who would offer so much and ask for nothing in return. Sleep came fitfully that night. She kept expecting Victor Moss to pound on her door, to drag her out into the street, to make good on his threats. But dawn came quietly, with mountain lights streaming through her window and the sound of Rico waking below. Jennifer washed with water from the pitcher on her dresser and changed into her only other dress, a simple gray cotton that was at least clean. She had just finished pinning her hair when a knock came at the door. "Miss Taylor, it is Roland Tucker. May I speak with you?" She opened the door to find him looking grimmer than the previous day. He held his hat in his hands and tension lined his shoulders. "He is here," Roland said without preamble. "Victor Moss arrived on the morning stage. He is asking about you at the station." Jennifer's stomach dropped. "Already?" "I am going to talk to him now. I wanted you to know in case you see us in town. Stay inside if you can. This will be over soon." "Mr. Tucker, wait." Jennifer caught his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath his sleeve. "Let me come with you. This is my burden. I cannot hide while you face it." "You are not hiding. You are being safe. Please." She met his eyes. "I have run from this for too long. I need to see it ended." Roland searched her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Stay behind me. If things turn ugly, you go straight into the nearest building." "Agreed, agreed." They walked down the hotel stairs together, out into the bright morning. Rico was busy despite the early hour, and Jennifer felt curious eyes follow them. A woman arriving on the stage and being met by Roland Tucker would be news in a town this size. Her being with him again this morning would set tongues wagging. Victor Moss stood outside the stage station, and Jennifer's blood went cold at the sight of him. He was a small man, barely taller than her own 5.5 feet, but he carried himself with the assurance of someone who enjoyed wielding power over others. His suit was expensive but ill-fitting, and his dark eyes held a calculating cruelty that made her skin crawl. He was perhaps 40 years old, with thinning hair slicked back from a high forehead. Those calculating eyes lit up when he saw Jennifer. "There is my little dove. I was worried you had gotten lost in these big mountains. Mr. Moss." Jennifer was proud that her voice did not shake. "Now, I know you are probably still gathering my money, but I am an impatient man. I think it is time we discussed alternative arrangements." Moss's smile was oily. "Though I see you have already found yourself a benefactor. Enterprising of you." Roland stepped forward, placing himself squarely between Jennifer and Moss. "You would be Victor Moss, and you would be in my way." Moss tried to look around Roland's substantial frame. "This is private business between Miss Taylor and myself. Not anymore. The debt is cleared." "Miss Taylor owes you nothing." Moss's expression shifted from oily friendliness to sharp interest. "Is that so, and you are taking over the loan?" "No, I am paying it in full, right now." Roland pulled a leather wallet from his jacket and counted out bills. $537. "That is what you claim she owes." "Well now, that is generous." Moss made no move to take the money. "But you see, there are additional charges, collection fees, travel expenses. Interest continues to accumulate naturally. I would say the debt is closer to $700 now. The debt is $537, the exact amount Miss Taylor told me yesterday. You will take this money and provide a signed receipt marking the debt as paid in full, or you will get nothing and can try your luck with the sheriff explaining why you are harassing a woman over a questionable claim. Jennifer watched Moss's face cycle through several expressions. Anger, calculation, then a crafty sort of consideration. You seem mighty interested in clearing Miss Taylor's obligations. What is she to you? That is none of your concern. It might be. Moss's eyes narrowed. See, I have been thinking. A woman like Jennifer, pretty enough, good with her hands, worth more than $500 to the right man. But if she has found herself a rich protector, well, maybe I need to reconsider the value of my claim. There is no claim. Roland's voice dropped to something dangerous. Her father's debt, if it ever truly existed in the amount you claim, would have died with him. You have been extorting a woman with lies and threats. I am offering you a way out that lets you walk away with your skin intact. I suggest you take it. Are you threatening me? Moss puffed up like an angry rooster. I am stating facts. Roland held out the money. Take it or leave it, but either way, you are done with Miss Taylor. A small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by the confrontation. Jennifer saw several townspeople she recognized from the previous day, their faces ranging from curious to concerned. She also saw a man with a star pinned to his vest moving through the crowd. What is the trouble here? The sheriff was an older man, lean and weathered, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. No trouble, Sheriff Barnes. Roland did not look away from Moss, just settling a business matter. That's so. Barnes looked between the three of them. Miss, you all right? Jennifer found her voice. Yes, sir. Mr. Tucker is helping me resolve a debt. Seems like more than that. Barnes turned his attention to Moss. You just arrived in town this morning, if I heard right. You have business in Rico. Just collecting what is owed to me. Moss's voice had lost some of its certainty. Uh-huh. And you got papers proving this debt. Moss hesitated just a fraction too long. The agreement was verbal. Verbal agreement for $500. Barnes's skepticism was clear. That is a lot of trust to put in a verbal agreement. Her father was a gambling man. I extended him credit. So you are a professional gambler. Barnes crossed his arms. Because we have laws about operating gambling establishments without a license, and following women across state lines to collect verbal debts sounds like harassment to me. Moss's face flushed red. This is legitimate business. Then you have got no problem taking Mr. Tucker's generous offer and moving along. Barnes nodded at the money still in Roland's hand. Seems like the best outcome for everyone. The calculation in Moss's eyes was almost visible. He was outnumbered, outsmarted, and outmaneuvered. Finally, he snatched the bills from Roland's hand. Fine, the debt is cleared. Receipt, Roland said flatly. Signed and dated, stating the debt is paid in full and Miss Taylor has no further obligation to you. I do not have paper right here. Sheriff Barnes produced a small notebook and pencil from his pocket. Use this. Make it clear and legal. Moss scribbled angrily on the paper, his handwriting barely legible, but the words were clear enough. Paid in full. No further obligation. He signed it with a flourish and thrust it at Roland. There, are we done? Not quite. Barnes took the paper, read it over, and handed it to Jennifer. Miss, this satisfy your understanding of the matter? Jennifer read the words twice, hardly daring to believe them. The weight that had pressed on her chest for over a year suddenly lifted, and she could breathe fully for the first time since her father's death. Yes, Sheriff, this settles everything. Good. Mr. Moss, there is a stage heading back east this afternoon. I suggest you be on it. Rico is not particularly welcoming to men who make their living threatening women. Moss looked like he wanted to argue, but the crowd around them had grown, and the faces were not friendly. He shoved the money into his pocket and stalked away, muttering under his breath. Jennifer watched him go, unable to quite believe it was over. "He is really gone." "He is gone," Roland confirmed. "And if he is smart, he will stay gone. Sheriff Barnes has a long memory." "That I do." Barnes tipped his hat to Jennifer. "Miss, welcome to Rico. You need anything, you let me know." "Roland Tucker is a good man. One of the best we have around here." He walked away before she could respond, dispersing the crowd with a few words. Jennifer looked down at the paper in her hands, at the proof of her freedom. Then she looked up at Roland, who was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "I cannot believe you just did that," she whispered. "You paid all that money for someone you barely know." "I told you I would." Roland offered her his arm. "Come, let us get some breakfast. You look like you might faint again." She took his arm, grateful for the support. They walked to the same restaurant as the previous day, and Jennifer was dimly aware of the stares and whispers following them. By noon, everyone in Rico would know that Roland Tucker had paid off a debt for the new mail-order bride and sent her creditor packing. Over eggs and coffee, Jennifer found her hands shaking. The relief was overwhelming, bringing tears she had been holding back for months. "I am sorry. I do not usually cry like this. You have been carrying that weight alone for a long time. It is all right to let it go now." Roland pushed a clean handkerchief across the table. "Take your time. I do not know how to thank you. $500 is a fortune. It is money well spent if it gives you peace." Roland took a sip of his coffee. "Now, if you are willing, I would like to tell you a bit about myself. Fair is fair since I know about your situation." Jennifer dabbed at her eyes and nodded. "Please." "I came to Colorado 8 years ago with $50 in my pocket and not much else. I worked in the mines for 2 years, saved every penny I could, and bought my first 100 acres with cash. I built a one-room cabin and started running cattle on shares with a neighboring rancher. The work nearly killed me that first year, but the second year was better. I bought more land, built a bigger house, and kept growing the operation. I am not rich by city standards, but I do well enough to support a family comfortably." "Why did you come west?" Jennifer asked. $50 in your pocket sounds like you left in a hurry." Roland's expression darkened slightly. "My father was not a good man. He drank, he gambled, and when he lost, he took his anger out on my mother and me. When I was 20, I decided I had enough of watching him hurt her. We fought badly, and I realized if I stayed, one of us would end up dead. So I left. Sent money to my mother when I could until I got word she had passed. That was 5 years ago. I am sorry. Me too. But it taught me something important. I never want to be the kind of man who uses his strength or his money to control someone weaker. I never want a woman to be with me because she has no other choice." He met her eyes. "That is why I meant what I said yesterday. You are free, Jennifer, truly free. If you want to stay and see if we can build something together, I would be honored. But if you want to take the afternoon stage to anywhere else in the world, I will buy your ticket and wish you well." Jennifer looked at this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she had been too afraid to speak aloud. He was handsome, certainly, but more than that, he was decent, kind, strong in ways that had nothing to do with the muscles in his arms. "I would like to stay," she said quietly, "at least for a while, if the offer is still open." Roland's smile transformed his face. "The offer is very much still open, though I should warn you I am not very good at courting. I have spent the last 6 years building a ranch, not learning fancy manners. I think you are doing just fine so far." They spent the rest of the morning talking, really talking, in a way their letters had only hinted at. Roland told her about his plans for the ranch, about the horses he wanted to breed and the cattle he hoped to expand. Jennifer told him about her childhood in St. Louis, about her mother who had died when she was 12, about learning to sew from an aunt who had more criticism than kindness. "Do you still sew?" Roland asked. "I do. It is one of the few things I am truly good at. I made both of these dresses myself. They are well made. The women around here would probably pay good money for skilled seamstress work. Most of them make do with whatever they can manage, and the nearest proper dressmaker is in Durango, a full day's ride away." The idea sparked something in Jennifer. "I had not thought about that. I could take in work, earn my own money." "You could." Roland leaned back in his chair. "Though I want to be clear about something. If we marry, what is mine becomes yours. You would not need to work unless you wanted to. But if sewing makes you happy, then you should do it. I think I would like having something that is mine. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. My mother always said she felt most herself when she was working her garden. My father destroyed it one night in a drunken rage, and I think something in her died along with those plants. Everyone needs something that is theirs alone." They talked until the afternoon sun slanted through the restaurant windows, covering everything from favorite foods to childhood dreams. Jennifer learned that Roland had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, making her laugh when she least expected it. He seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts on everything from town politics to the best way to can peaches. "I should take you back to the hotel," Roland finally said. "Unless you would like to come see the ranch again. I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen. She has been after me for months to find a wife so she does not have to rattle around in that big house alone all day. She would be delighted to meet you." Jennifer wanted to see the ranch again, to explore the house that might become her home. "I would like that very much." They took the buggy up into the hills, and the ride felt different this time. Less desperate, more hopeful. Jennifer found herself watching Roland's hands on the reins, capable and sure. She studied his profile when he was not looking, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The Crooked Creek Ranch was even more impressive in full daylight. The house was beautifully built, with real glass windows and a stone chimney. The porch had chairs positioned to catch the evening sun, and Jennifer could imagine sitting there with a cup of coffee, watching the sky change colors over the mountains. Mrs. Chen met them at the door, a small Chinese woman with iron-gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She looked Jennifer over with frank assessment and must have liked what she saw because her stern expression softened into something approaching approval. "About time you found someone with sense in her eyes," Mrs. Chen said to Roland. Come in, come in. I have tea ready." The inside of the house was as well made as the outside. The main room had a large stone fireplace, comfortable furniture that looked hand-crafted, and windows that let in floods of light. A dining table big enough for 8 sat near the kitchen, and Jennifer could see a study off to one side with a desk and shelves lined with books. "I will show you upstairs," Roland said, a bit awkwardly. "There are 4 bedrooms. I thought, if you agreed to stay, you could have your choice of rooms for now, until, well, if things progress between us." Jennifer appreciated his consideration more than she could say. "That is very thoughtful." The stairs led to a wide hallway with doors opening off both sides. Roland showed her a room at the front of the house with windows overlooking the valley. It had a large bed with a quilt in shades of blue and green, a dresser, a washstand, and even a small desk by the window. "This is beautiful," Jennifer said honestly. "Did you make the quilt?" Mrs. Chen did. "She makes one every winter, says it keeps her hands busy when the snow keeps us inside." Roland moved to the window. "You can see all the way to the main road from here. In spring, the wildflowers cover the whole valley. Jennifer stood beside him, imagining what the view would look like painted in spring colors. She could smell sage and pine through the open window, and somewhere below, horses whinnied in their pasture. "I think I could be happy here," she said softly. Roland turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I will do everything in my power to make sure you are. I know we have only known each other a day, Jennifer, but I feel like I have been waiting for you for years. Does that sound foolish?" "No, it sounds like how I feel too." They stood there in the afternoon light, close enough to touch but not quite touching, and Jennifer felt the space between them charged with possibility. Roland lifted his hand slowly, giving her every chance to step back, and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "May I court you properly?" he asked. "I know the circumstances that brought you here were not romantic, but I would like to do this right." "I would like that too." His smile was worth every mile she had traveled, every moment of fear and uncertainty. "Then let us start with dinner. Mrs. Chen makes the best roast chicken you have ever tasted, and I want to hear more about these dresses you make." Dinner was wonderful. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself, producing not just roast chicken but potatoes with herbs, fresh bread, and a berry pie that made Jennifer want to weep with pleasure. They ate at the big dining table, and Mrs. Chen joined them, regaling Jennifer with stories about Roland's early days on the ranch. "He tried to fix the roof that first winter," Mrs. Chen said, her eyes twinkling. "Fell straight through into a snowbank. I found him upside down with his boots sticking up, cursing in 3 languages. It was not that bad," Roland protested, but he was grinning. "It was exactly that bad. You are lucky you did not break your fool neck." Mrs. Chen turned to Jennifer, "But he learned. He is stubborn, this one. Once he decides to do something, he does not quit until it is done right." Jennifer enjoyed watching this easier side of Roland, the banter with his housekeeper who was clearly more like family than hired help. She learned that Mrs. Chen's husband had died in a mining accident 6 years ago, and Roland had offered her a place when she had nowhere else to go. "I told him I would not take charity," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "But he said he needed someone to keep the house from falling apart, and I needed work, so we struck a bargain. Best decision either of us made, I think." "The house would have fallen apart without you," Roland agreed. "I can manage cattle and horses, but keeping a proper household was beyond me." After dinner, Roland drove Jennifer back to town as the sun set behind the mountains. The temperature dropped quickly once the sun disappeared, and Roland offered her his jacket without asking. It smelled like him, like leather and sage and something uniquely masculine. "Thank you for today," Jennifer said as they approached Rico. "For everything. I still cannot quite believe that my debt is gone, that I am free to make my own choices. You never deserved to carry that burden. I am glad I could help lift it." Roland pulled the buggy to a stop in front of the hotel. "May I call on you tomorrow? I thought we could walk around town, let you meet some of the other folks, and there is a church social on Sunday if you would like to attend with me." "I would like that very much." Roland helped her down from the buggy, his hand steady on her waist. For a moment they stood close in the gathering darkness, and Jennifer wondered if he would kiss her, but instead he bowed slightly and stepped back. "Good night, Jennifer. Sleep well." "Good night, Roland." She watched him drive away, his jacket still warm around her shoulders, and felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Hope, she realized. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt genuine hope for the future. The next week passed in a haze of happiness that Jennifer had never experienced before. Roland called on her every day, sometimes taking her for drives into the mountains, sometimes just walking through town. He introduced her to what seemed like every resident of Rico, and people welcomed her with cautious warmth. She was the mail-order bride who had arrived with trouble, but she was also the woman Roland Tucker had chosen, and that carried weight in the community. Jennifer met the pastor's wife, a kind woman named Sarah who immediately invited her to the ladies' quilting circle. She met the general store owner and his daughter, who asked if she could really make dresses as pretty as the one she was wearing. She met miners and ranchers, schoolteachers and saloon owners, and slowly began to feel like maybe she could belong in this mountain town. Sunday came, and Roland called for her at the hotel in his finest clothes. He wore a suit that fit his broad frame perfectly, his hair neatly combed, his boots polished. Jennifer had carefully pressed her gray dress, wishing she had something nicer for church. "You look lovely," Roland said when he saw her, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe him. The church was a simple white building at the edge of town, with a steeple and a bell that rang clear across the valley. Inside, wooden pews faced a plain altar, and morning light streamed through the windows. Jennifer sat beside Roland, acutely aware of the eyes on them, the whispers about the new couple. The service was simple and heartfelt, the pastor speaking about forgiveness and new beginnings. Jennifer felt the words settle into her heart, letting go of the shame she had carried about her father's debts, about needing help, about coming west out of desperation rather than choice. After the service, the church social was held in the yard under the cottonwood trees. Women had brought pies and cakes, sandwiches and cold chicken. Children ran shrieking between the tables while adults visited and caught up on the week's news. Sarah, the pastor's wife, cornered Jennifer with a warm smile. "I am so glad you came. Roland has been alone too long in that big house. It is good to see him happy. He has been very kind to me. Kind is one word for it." Sarah lowered her voice conspiratorially. "The whole town is buzzing about how he paid off your debt and sent that awful man packing. Very romantic." Jennifer felt her cheeks heat. "It was not quite like that." "Was it not?" Sarah's eyes twinkled. "The way Roland looks at you says different. That man is smitten, honey. The question is, how do you feel about him?" How did she feel? Jennifer watched Roland across the yard, talking with a group of ranchers, his laugh carrying on the autumn air. He was handsome and kind and generous. He made her feel safe in a way she never had before. But was that love or just gratitude? "I care about him," Jennifer said carefully. "I am just not sure if it is fair to him. I came here out of necessity, not because I chose him for himself." "And yet you are still here," Sarah pointed out. "He gave you the freedom to leave and you stayed. That is a choice too, is it not?" Before Jennifer could answer, a commotion at the edge of the social drew everyone's attention. A rider had come in hard, his horse lathered and blowing. He swung down and made straight for Sheriff Barnes, talking urgently. Roland appeared at Jennifer's side, his hand light on her back. "Stay here. Something is wrong." But Jennifer followed him anyway as he and several other men gathered around the sheriff. The rider was a young cowboy from one of the ranches to the south, and his face was pale with distress. "Rustlers hit the double bar last night," he was saying. "Ran off about 50 head of cattle. Mr. Dawson is gathering a posse to track them, but they have a good head start. He is asking for any men who can ride to meet at his place by noon." "How many rustlers?" Roland asked. "Tracks show maybe 6 or 7. They are heading west toward Utah, looks like." Roland's jaw tightened. He looked at Jennifer, conflict clear in his face. "I should go. The Dawsons are good people, and rustlers cannot be allowed to operate freely, or they will just keep hitting ranches." Jennifer's heart clenched with fear, but she understood. This was part of living in the West, part of the community helping each other. "Be careful. I will be back as soon as I can. A few days at most." He hesitated, then took her hand right there in front of everyone. "Wait for me. I will wait." He squeezed her hand once, then was gone, striding toward the church where the horses were tied. Jennifer watched him ride away with a group of other men, a cold knot of worry settling in her stomach. Sarah put an arm around her shoulders. "He will be fine. Roland knows these mountains better than most, and he can handle himself." "I know. It is just—" Jennifer did not finish, but Sarah seemed to understand. "You care about him more than you realized. That is always how it happens, is it not? You think you have your feelings all figured out, and then something like this makes you see the truth." Jennifer spent the next 3 days trying not to worry. She kept busy, accepting an invitation to join the quilting circle where she impressed the other women with her neat stitches and eye for color. She visited the general store and discussed possibly making dresses on commission. She walked the town, learning its rhythms and moods. But at night, alone in her hotel room, she could not stop thinking about Roland somewhere in the mountains, chasing dangerous men. What if something happened to him? What if she never got the chance to tell him that she was not just grateful, that somewhere in the past week she had started to fall in love with him? The realization should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt right, like a key turning in a lock. On the 4th day, the men rode back into town. Jennifer was at the general store when she heard the commotion outside. She ran into the street, her heart in her throat, and felt relief crash over her when she saw Roland among the returning riders. He was dusty and tired, with several days' beard growth shadowing his jaw, but he was whole and unharmed. Their eyes met across the street, and Roland swung down from his horse immediately. He crossed to her in long strides, and Jennifer met him halfway, not caring who was watching. He caught her in his arms, holding her tight, and she buried her face in his dusty shirt. "I am all right," he said into her hair. "We caught them, got the cattle back. I am all right. I was so worried." "Were you?" He pulled back just enough to see her face. "I thought about you the whole time. Kept me focused, knowing you were here waiting. Roland, I need to tell you something. Tell me." But the words stuck in her throat, too big and too important for the middle of the street with half the town watching. "Can we go somewhere private?" He understood immediately. "Come back to the ranch with me. We can talk there." Jennifer nodded, and Roland arranged for someone to return his horse to the livery while he commandeered a buggy. They drove out of town quickly, neither of them speaking but the air between them charged with unspoken words. "At the ranch, Mrs." Chen took one look at them and made herself scarce, disappearing into the kitchen with a knowing smile. Roland led Jennifer to the front porch where they could look out over the valley in the late afternoon light. "What did you want to tell me?" Roland asked gently. Jennifer took a breath, gathering her courage. "When you rode away on Sunday, I realized something. I have been telling myself that I stayed because you were kind, because you helped me, because I had nowhere else to go. But that is not the truth, not anymore." "What is the truth?" "The truth is that I stayed because of you. Because when I am with you, I feel like myself for the first time in years. Because you make me laugh and you listen when I talk and you look at me like I matter. Because I was terrified something would happen to you in those mountains, and I would never get the chance to tell you that I am falling in love with you." Roland went very still. "Say that again." "I am falling in love with you," Jennifer repeated, looking him straight in the eye. "I know it has only been a week. I know I came here as a mail-order bride and you probably think I am just grateful, but it is more than that. It is you, Roland. It has been you since you met me at that stage and took care of me without asking for anything in return." Jennifer. Her name was almost a prayer on his lips. "I have been half in love with you since your first letter. When you stepped off that stage looking so scared and brave at the same time, I was done for. This whole week, I have been trying to court you properly, to give you time, but all I wanted was to tell you that you are the answer to every hope I have had for the future. Then tell me now, I love you. The words were simple but weighted with truth. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you see the best in people. I love how you make this house feel like a home just by being in it. I want to marry you, not because we arranged it through letters, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Jennifer felt tears spill down her cheeks, but they were happy tears this time. Yes, yes, Roland's face transformed with joy. Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I want to build a life here with you. Yes to all of it. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her like she was precious and fragile and strong all at once. Jennifer wrapped her arms around his neck and held on, feeling like she had finally found her place in the world when Roland kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning. Jennifer answered by pressing closer, and the kiss deepened into something that promised passion and partnership in equal measure. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roland rested his forehead against hers. "How soon can we marry?" he asked. "I do not want to rush you, but I do not want to wait either. I do not want to wait, but we should probably do it properly, let people prepare. A few weeks, 2 weeks, Roland said firmly. I will talk to the pastor tomorrow. We can have the ceremony at the church, invite the whole town if you want, or keep it small. Whatever you prefer." "Small," Jennifer decided. "Just the people who matter. Sarah and the pastor, Mrs. Chen, Sheriff Barnes. I do not need a big celebration, I just need you." They sat on the porch as the sun set, making plans for their future. Roland wanted to expand the horse breeding operation and thought Jennifer's eye for detail would be helpful in selecting bloodlines. Jennifer wanted to set up a proper sewing room and maybe take on an apprentice eventually. They talked about children, both wanting them but agreeing to let it happen naturally. They talked about everything and nothing, just happy to be together. Mrs. Chen called them in for supper eventually, and over pot roast and potatoes, they told her about the engagement. She nodded as though she had expected nothing less and immediately began planning the menu for a small wedding breakfast. "You will stay in town until the wedding," Mrs. Chen said firmly to Jennifer. "Proper and respectable. After you are married, then you move in here as mistress of this house." "I would not want to take your place," Jennifer protested. "This is your home too. And it will stay my home. But you will be Mrs. Tucker, and that means something. We will work together, you and I, teach each other our ways, but you will be the lady of the house." Jennifer looked at Roland, who smiled and shrugged. There is no arguing with Mrs. Chen when she has decided something, but she is right. This will be our home together, all three of us. I would not have it any other way. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Jennifer made her own wedding dress, a simple but elegant design in cream-colored silk that the general store owner ordered specially from Denver. Sarah and the quilting circle made decorations for the church. Roland worked on the house, making sure everything was perfect for Jennifer's arrival. They saw each other every day, sometimes for hours, sometimes just for a few stolen minutes. Every meeting ended with kisses that grew more heated, more desperate, until Roland would pull away with a groan. 2 weeks, he would mutter. "I can wait 2 weeks." Jennifer was not as patient as she once might have been. She found herself thinking about their wedding night, about finally being able to touch him freely, to see him without the barriers of clothing and propriety. The wanting was new and thrilling and slightly scandalous. The night before the wedding, Sarah hosted Jennifer at the parsonage, insisting it was bad luck for the bride and groom to see each other. Jennifer lay awake in the guest room, too excited to sleep. Tomorrow she would become Mrs. Roland Tucker. Tomorrow her new life would truly begin. The morning dawned clear and beautiful, with autumn sun gilding the mountains. Sarah helped Jennifer dress, arranging her hair in a simple style woven with small white flowers. The cream dress fit perfectly, highlighting Jennifer's figure without being immodest. "You are a beautiful bride," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "Roland is a lucky man." "I am the lucky one," Jennifer countered. The church was decorated with pine boughs and late-season wildflowers. The guest list was indeed small, just Mrs. Chen, Sheriff Barnes, Sarah and the pastor, and a handful of their closest neighbors. Roland stood at the altar in his best suit, his eyes locked on the door as he waited. When Jennifer walked down the aisle, his face said everything his words might have missed. Love, devotion, wonder that she was really his. Jennifer felt answering emotions swell in her own chest as she took her place beside him. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They spoke traditional vows, but when it came time to exchange rings, Roland pulled out a surprise. The band was gold, set with a small green stone that matched her eyes. "It is not much," he whispered as he slid it onto her finger, "but I wanted you to have something that was just yours." "It is perfect," Jennifer whispered back. When the pastor pronounced them married and told Roland he could kiss his bride, the kiss was tender and sweet and full of promise. The small gathering cheered, and then they were walking back down the aisle together, husband and wife. The wedding breakfast at the ranch was a cheerful affair. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with food, and there were toasts and laughter and stories. But Jennifer was acutely aware of Roland beside her, of the weight of the ring on her finger, of the bedroom upstairs that was now theirs. Finally, the guests departed, even Mrs. Chen retreating to her own small cottage behind the main house to give them privacy. Jennifer stood in the main room, suddenly nervous. Roland came to her, taking her hands gently. "We can take this as slow as you need. There is no rush." "I am not nervous about that," Jennifer admitted. "I am nervous that I will not know what to do, that I will disappoint you." "You could never disappoint me." Roland cupped her face in his hands. "We will learn together. And Jennifer, I love you. That is what matters." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and Jennifer let herself sink into it. When he lifted her in his arms and carried her up the stairs, she laughed against his shoulder, feeling giddy and happy and loved. Their wedding night was tender and passionate by turns, a discovery of each other that was sometimes awkward, often breathless, and always rooted in the love growing between them. Roland was patient and careful, making sure Jennifer felt only pleasure, and when they finally came together completely, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Afterward, lying in his arms in the big bed with moonlight streaming through the window, Jennifer felt more content than she ever had in her life. "Happy?" Roland asked, his hand stroking through her hair. "Incredibly." "You, more than I have words for." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, on this life." "Thank you for saving me," Jennifer said. "Not just from the debt, but from a life without love, without purpose. You gave me everything, Roland." "We gave each other everything," he corrected. "That is what marriage should be." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and when Jennifer woke to mountain sunlight the next morning, it took her a moment to remember where she was. Then she felt Roland's warmth beside her, saw the ring on her finger and smiled. She was home. Finally, truly home. The first months of marriage were an adjustment. Jennifer had never run a household before, and the ranch required management skills she did not possess. But Mrs. Chen was a patient teacher, showing her how to preserve food for the winter, how to manage the household accounts, how to work with the ranch hands. Jennifer also started taking in sewing work, converting one of the unused bedrooms into a proper workroom with good light, and a new sewing machine that Roland bought her as a gift. Word spread quickly about her skill, and soon she had more commissions than she could handle. She took on her first apprentice, a shy 15-year-old girl from town named Annie who showed real talent with a needle. Roland's horse breeding operation expanded, and Jennifer found she had a good eye for bloodlines and conformation. She started accompanying him to sales and auctions, offering opinions that he valued and trusted. They worked together seamlessly, building not just a business but a partnership. Winter came to the Colorado mountains hard and fast. Snow piled deep, and there were weeks when leaving the ranch was impossible. But Jennifer loved those cozy times, sitting by the fire with Roland in the evenings, reading or talking or simply being together. Mrs. Chen taught her to make dumplings and pot stickers, sharing recipes from her homeland that Jennifer practiced until she got them right. Christmas was magical, their first as a married couple. Roland cut down a pine tree and Jennifer decorated it with paper ornaments and strings of popcorn. They exchanged simple gifts. She made him a warm wool shirt, and he gave her a beautiful writing desk for her sewing room so she could keep track of commissions. Spring came with a rush of meltwater and wildflowers, just as Roland had promised. The valley transformed into a carpet of color, and Jennifer spent hours on the porch, sketching designs for dresses inspired by the patterns of nature around her. It was in late spring that Jennifer first suspected she might be pregnant. She had been feeling unwell in the mornings and certain smells made her nauseous. Mrs. Chen noticed before Jennifer worked up the courage to say anything. "You are with child," Mrs. Chen said matter-of-factly over breakfast one morning. Jennifer nearly dropped her teacup. "How did you know?" "I have eyes, and I have seen this before. Have you told Roland?" "I wanted to be sure first." "You are sure," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "Now tell your husband so he can stop worrying about why you are not eating breakfast." That evening, Jennifer asked Roland to walk with her down to the creek. The aspens were leafing out in bright green and the water ran high and cold with snowmelt. She tried to think of clever ways to tell him but finally just blurted it out. "I think I am pregnant." Roland stopped walking, his eyes going wide. "You think, or you are?" "I am fairly certain." "The signs are all there. Mrs. Chen says so too." "Mrs. Chen knows." Roland looked torn between joy and indignation. "Why did she know before me?" "Because she is observant and I was nervous to tell you." "Are you happy?" Instead of answering with words, Roland picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "Happy? Jennifer, I am over the moon, a baby. We are going to have a baby." He was so careful with her after that, treating her like she was made of glass. Jennifer had to remind him repeatedly that she was pregnant, not fragile, and could still do most of her normal activities. But his protectiveness was sweet, and she could not really complain when he insisted on bringing her tea in bed or rubbing her feet when they were sore. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Sarah organized a surprise baby shower with the other women in town, and Jennifer was overwhelmed by the generosity of their gifts: handmade blankets, tiny clothes, even a beautiful cradle that one of the ranchers had carved. Roland prepared the nursery himself, painting it a cheerful yellow and building shelves for the books he had already started collecting. He talked to Jennifer's belly at night, telling their unborn child about the ranch, about the horses they would learn to ride, about all the adventures they would have. Jennifer's labor started on a cool October evening, almost exactly a year after she had first arrived in Rico. Mrs. Chen sent one of the ranch hands for the doctor and the midwife, while Roland paced the floor downstairs, radiating anxiety. The labor was long but not complicated. Jennifer worked through the contractions with Mrs. Chen and Sarah at her side, focusing on the reward waiting at the end. When the baby finally arrived in the early hours of dawn, the midwife announced it with a smile. "It is a boy, a healthy, strong boy." Jennifer held her son for the first time, counting his tiny fingers and toes, marveling at his dark hair and the shape of his face that already reminded her of Roland. When they brought Roland up to meet his son, the big, strong cowboy broke down in tears. "He is perfect," Roland whispered, gently touching the baby's hand. "You are perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for giving me this." They named him Thomas after Jennifer's grandfather, who had been the one kind person in her childhood. Thomas Roland Tucker, a name that sounded strong and good. The early weeks of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Jennifer had never been so tired, but she had also never felt so fulfilled. Roland was an involved father from the start, walking the floor with Thomas at night, changing diapers without complaint, talking to his son constantly, even though the baby was far too young to understand. Mrs. Chen doted on the baby shamelessly, spoiling him with handmade toys and spending hours just watching him sleep. "He has your eyes," she told Jennifer, "and his father's stubborn chin." As Thomas grew from an infant into a curious toddler, the ranch continued to thrive. Roland's reputation as a horse breeder spread, and they had buyers coming from as far as California. Jennifer's sewing business was going so well that she now employed 3 apprentices and was training them to eventually take over most of the work so she could focus on design. When Thomas was 2 years old, Jennifer discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news felt different, less scary, more joyful. They knew what to expect, knew they could handle it. Their daughter was born the following spring, arriving quickly and easily as though she could not wait to join the family. They named her Charlotte, and she had Jennifer's auburn hair and Roland's amber eyes. Life settled into a rhythm of happy chaos. Thomas was into everything, curious and energetic, while Charlotte was a calmer baby who seemed content to watch the world from her mother's arms. Roland juggled ranch work with fatherhood, and Jennifer marveled at how naturally he had taken to being a parent. One evening, when Thomas was 4 and Charlotte was 2, Jennifer stood on the porch watching Roland play with the children in the yard. He had Thomas on his shoulders while Charlotte toddled after them, shrieking with laughter. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting everything in shades of gold. Mrs. Chen came to stand beside her, a rare smile on her usually stern face. "You have built something good here." "We have," Jennifer agreed. "All of us together." "Do you ever think about that day you arrived?" "The debt, the fear, sometimes, but it feels like a different life, like it happened to someone else. That scared woman who got off the stage seems so far from who I am now. She is not so different. She was strong then too. She just did not know it yet." Mrs. Chen patted Jennifer's hand. "Roland saw it, though. He saw who you could be when you were free to become yourself." Jennifer thought about that later, lying in bed with Roland after the children were finally asleep. "Do you remember the day we met?" she asked. "Every detail." "You looked terrified and determined at the same time. I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen." "I did not feel brave. I felt desperate." "Sometimes those are the same thing." Roland pulled her closer. "I am glad you were brave enough to step off that stage to give me a chance to build this life with me. I am glad you paid my debt." "Best money I ever spent," Roland said with a grin. "Got a wife, 2 children, and more happiness than I knew existed. That is quite a return on investment." Jennifer laughed and swatted his shoulder. "So romantic, discussing me like a business transaction. You know what I mean. That moment deciding to help you changed everything for me, changed me. I got to be the man I always wanted to be, someone who helps rather than hurts, who builds rather than destroys. You were always that man. I just got lucky enough to be there when you showed it." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, as they had almost every night since their wedding. Outside, an owl hooted in the pines, and a coyote sang to the moon rising over the mountains. Years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and growth. Thomas grew into a serious, responsible boy who loved working with the horses. Charlotte was more interested in her mother's sewing, sitting beside Jennifer for hours as she worked, learning to make tiny, perfect stitches. They added a third child, another boy they named James, who was a perfect combination of his siblings, energetic like Thomas but artistic like Charlotte. The ranch prospered. Roland was acknowledged as one of the best horse breeders in Colorado, and their cattle operation expanded to several hundred head. Jennifer's design business became so successful that she opened a small shop in Rico, employing 6 seamstresses and selling ready-made dresses as well as taking custom orders. Mrs. Chen grew older but no less sharp, ruling the household with efficient kindness. She taught all 3 children to speak Chinese, to cook traditional dishes, and to respect their elders. When Thomas was 10, she finally revealed that she considered them her family, that the years at the ranch had given her more joy than she had thought possible after losing her own husband and children. "This is my home," she said simply. "You are my people. Nothing could make me leave." Jennifer hugged her fiercely, grateful beyond words for the woman who had welcomed her all those years ago, who had helped her learn to run a household, who had become a grandmother to her children. As the children grew toward adulthood, Jennifer and Roland found new rhythms in their marriage. The passion that had always been between them deepened into something richer, more complex. They still stole kisses in the barn, still made love like newlyweds when the house was finally quiet. But they also had the comfort of knowing each other completely, of being so intertwined that they could communicate with just a look. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Roland took Jennifer back to the spot where he had first brought her, where he had shown her the ranch and offered her freedom. They sat on the hillside, watching their children play in the distance, and Roland took her hand. "If I could go back to that day, knowing everything that would happen, I would not change a single thing," he said. "Not one moment of struggle or joy or anything in between." "Even the part where I arrived with debt and danger," Jennifer teased. "Especially that part, because it brought you to me, because it gave us this story, this life. We built something real from what could have been just a business arrangement." "We built something real from love," Jennifer corrected. "Love that started in letters, grew when we met, and has just kept growing every day since." They watched the sun set over their valley, over the life they had created together. Thomas was teaching Charlotte how to rope a fence post, while James sat drawing in his sketchbook. The house they had made together stood solid and warm behind them, smoke curling from the chimney where Mrs. Chen was preparing dinner. Jennifer thought about the woman she had been a decade ago, stepping off that stage with nothing but debt and fear. She thought about the first time she had seen Roland, how his kindness had seemed too good to be true. She thought about all the moments that had brought them to this hillside, this moment, this perfect life. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what? For seeing me when I could not see myself. For giving me freedom and then making me want to stay. For building this life with me, for these children, for every day we have had together." Roland kissed her temple, a gesture that had become so familiar over the years but no less meaningful. "You gave me just as much, Jennifer. You gave me a reason to be the man I wanted to be. You gave me love and family and home. Everything I have, everything I am because you took a chance on me." "We took a chance on each other," Jennifer said, "and look what it became." As darkness fell and the first stars appeared over the mountains, they walked hand in hand back to the house. The children ran to meet them, full of stories about their day. Mrs. Chen called them in for dinner, her voice carrying across the valley. Light glowed warm from every window, welcoming them home. Inside, the family gathered around the table, passing food and conversation in equal measure. Thomas talked about a horse he wanted to train, Charlotte showed off a dress she had designed, and James proudly displayed his latest drawing. Roland listened to each child with complete attention, and Jennifer watched her family with a heart so full it felt like it might burst. After dinner, after the children were finally in bed, Jennifer and Roland sat on the porch as they had so many nights before. The air smelled of pine and autumn, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed peacefully. "Do you ever wonder how different your life would be if you had not answered my advertisement?" Jennifer asked. Roland considered the question seriously. "I would have eventually married someone, I suppose, needed help with the ranch, wanted children, but it would not have been this. It would not have been you, and that makes all the difference. I would have." Jennifer trailed off. She did not like to think about what would have happened if she had not found the courage to leave St. Louis to accept Roland's offer. "I would have been trapped by the debt, by Victor Moss, by a life that kept getting smaller and darker. But you are not trapped. You are here, free, building businesses and raising children and living exactly the life you choose. Because you paid my debt and asked nothing back." "I got everything back," Roland corrected. "Just not in the way Victor Moss would have understood. I got you, Jennifer. I got this family, this home, this life. That is worth more than any amount of money." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. An owl called from the pines, and the horses nickered softly in their pasture. Everything was peaceful, settled, exactly as it should be. In the years that followed, as their children grew to adulthood and started families of their own, Jennifer and Roland remained the steady center of an ever-expanding family. Thomas took over much of the ranch operation, marrying a sensible young woman from Durango and giving them 3 grandchildren. Charlotte opened her own dress shop in Denver, becoming known throughout Colorado for her innovative designs. James went east to study art, but always came home for Christmas, filling the house with his paintings and his laughter. Mrs. Chen lived to the remarkable age of 87, spending her final years spoiling grandchildren and great-grandchildren with equal enthusiasm. When she passed peacefully in her sleep, the entire town of Rico turned out for her funeral, a testament to the woman who had helped build so much of the community's heart. Roland and Jennifer grew old together with grace, their hair turning gray, their faces lining, but their love remaining as strong as ever. They still took evening walks when weather permitted, still held hands across the dinner table, still looked at each other like newlyweds after 40 years of marriage. On their 40th anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Jennifer looked around at all the faces, all the lives that had sprung from that single brave decision to step off a stagecoach in Rico, Colorado. Thomas stood with his wife and children, solid and dependable like his father. Charlotte sparkled in a dress of her own design, successful and confident. James had brought his latest paintings as gifts, each one capturing some piece of their family story. Grandchildren ran shrieking through the house that had once seemed too big and now felt perfectly sized. Roland found Jennifer in the kitchen, watching the organized chaos with a smile. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Not bad for a mail-order bride and a lonely cowboy," he murmured. Jennifer laughed and turned in his arms. "Not bad at all." They danced that night, spinning slowly on the porch while their family watched and cheered. The music came from a gramophone, modern technology that would have seemed like magic 40 years ago. But some things never changed: the mountains rising dark against the stars, the smell of pine on the wind, and the feeling of being exactly where you belonged. "I love you," Jennifer said, the words as true now as the first time she had spoken them. "Every day I love you more." "And I love you," Roland replied. "For 40 years I have loved you. For however many years we have left, I will love you, and after that I will love you still." They kissed as the stars wheeled overhead, as their family celebrated around them, as the ranch they had built together hummed with life and love. The debt that had once defined Jennifer's existence had long since transformed into something else entirely, a debt of gratitude to a universe that had brought her to this mountain town, to this man, to this life. But it was not really a debt at all. It was a gift, freely given and freely received, that had multiplied beyond measure into something neither of them could have imagined that day in 1882, when Jennifer had stepped off the stage and Roland had decided to help a stranger in need. Years later, when they were both in their 70s, Roland fell ill. It was nothing dramatic, just the slow winding down of a life well lived. Jennifer sat beside his bed day and night, holding his hand, telling him stories of all their years together. "We did good, did we not?" Roland asked one quiet afternoon, his voice weak but his eyes still bright. "We did great," Jennifer corrected. "We built something real and good and lasting. No regrets, not a single one." "You," Roland smiled, the expression lighting his weathered face. "Only that I will not have more time with you. But what we have had, Jennifer, what we have built together, it has been more than I ever dreamed possible." He passed peacefully in his sleep 2 days later, with Jennifer holding his hand and their children gathered around. The funeral was huge, with people coming from all over Colorado to pay respects to a man who had lived with integrity, who had built a business and a family with equal care, who had changed lives simply by choosing kindness when he could have chosen indifference. Jennifer lived another 5 years, surrounded by family, still sharp and engaged despite her age. She spent her days writing down family stories so her grandchildren and great-grandchildren would know where they came from, how their family had started with a brave woman and a kind man who saw possibilities instead of problems. On a cool autumn evening, much like the one when she had first arrived in Rico 53 years earlier, Jennifer sat on the porch of the ranch house and looked out over the valley. Everything was different now. The town had grown. The ranch had expanded. Technology had changed the world. But the mountains were the same. The stars shone with the same light, and the love that had built this family remained as strong as ever. She thought about that young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but debt and fear. She thought about the man who had paid that debt and asked nothing back, who had instead given her the freedom to choose him, to love him, to build a life with him. She thought about all the moments between then and now, the laughter and tears, the struggles and triumphs, the ordinary days that had added up to an extraordinary life. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind, to the mountains, to the memory of the man she had loved for over half a century. For everything, for all of it. When they found her the next morning, she had passed peacefully, a smile on her face, one hand outstretched as though reaching for someone only she could see. They buried her beside Roland on the hillside overlooking the valley, where they could watch over the land they had loved and the family they had created together. The Crooked Creek Ranch continued through the generations, always staying in the family, always carrying the legacy of the love that had founded it. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blows just right through the Colorado mountains, you can almost hear it, the sound of a man and woman laughing together, dancing on the porch, living out a love story that started with debt, but became something priceless, something that no amount of money could ever buy or measure. A love story that proved the truth of what Jennifer and Roland had always known, that the best things in life cannot be bought or sold. only freely given and gratefully received, growing stronger with each passing year until they become something eternal, something that outlasts even death itself.